Welcome into the Football Guys Fantasy Football Show. We are back again with our special guest, Joey Wright, Alfredo Brown, joined as always by Dave Kluge. And, well, if you need a break from all the fun election, post-election content that's out there, we are here to entertain you with the most incredible bit of fantasy football info, and it's tight end rankings. Yeah, you're welcome, America. That's what we've got for you. So today we're going to be ranking our rest of season tight ends, and we're going to be doing our top 24. We're going to be starting from the bottom, working our way up to the top and going through the tiers, going through which players you might want to be trading for, who's got an easier strength of schedule, and where we might disagree on some of these players. So guys, I'm going to start us off at the bottom here, at the bottom tier. Let's start with tight end number 24, and this is going to be tight ends 24 through 16. So at 24, we've got Tyler Conklin. At 23, Jonnu Smith. 22, Mike Gesicki. 21, Dalton Schultz. 20, Zach Ertz. 19, Pat Freiermuth. 18, Dallas Goedert. 17, Hunter Henry. And 16, Cole Kmet. So, Joey, I'll pose this question to you first.
Yeah.
Is there a dark horse amongst this group that you think maybe right now we're kind of overlooking, but they could become an every week starter down the line?
I think you're going to love my answer, Alfredo. It's Jonnu Smith for me. Since week 5, 6 or more targets in every game. He's the tight end 10 in that period for points per game. As Tua's recovering from his injury, he's back on the field. I expect he's going to want to stay upright. And checking down to Jonnu Smith makes him all that more appealing to me. So if I had to look at a dark horse out of this list, I do like the possibility of Gesicki, and Cole Kmet's been utilized pretty well. But for me, it's going to be Jonnu Smith.
Dave, what about you?
Jonnu Smith is my guy as well, and everything Joey said I was about to say about the target share that we have seen bump up, and we saw that before Tua Tagovailoa returned in the 2 games before he was back, and I was hopeful that it would carry over, and it did. He's maintained the same target average that he did without Tua over the last month, so I think he's the one that has the highest ceiling of the bunch. But I'll talk about Hunter Henry as well. This is a guy who is arguably the best receiver on his team, and it's been a rough season so far for the New England Patriots. Jacoby Brissett was playing some of the worst football we've seen of any quarterback in the league, and you can't deny the spark that Drake May has provided so far for this offense. So if we expect the entire offense to get better, more passing volume, more passing yardage, Hunter Henry, who could potentially be the perceived wide receiver 1 on this team, if you will, is a guy who could really end up outpacing the rest of season ranking we've given him.
Yeah, Hunter Henry, 23 receptions over the last 4 games, and he has been a top 13 tight end in 3 out of those 4. That was the guy that I wanted to talk about as well, just because I think that if we talk about Drake May the way we did in the waiver wire show, where there could be a nice little light at the end of the tunnel here for the Patriots and their offense in general, that it could get better. Hunter Henry is one of those guys that's probably still hanging out in your waiver wire, and you can plug him in every week knowing that you're going to have at least that 4-catch floor that you probably want out of a tight end, with a little bit of that touchdown upside with Drake May there on the offense.
We got to talk about Mike Gesicki as well.
Yes.
He has been on a heater the last 2 weeks, just over the last 2 weeks, 14 targets, 12 receptions, 173 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And both of those games came without T. Higgins. Now, T. Higgins is still nursing this quadriceps injury, but, Jeff and I talked about it on the Friday show that we do a couple of weeks ago. T. Higgins put some really good stuff on film a few weeks back, and we know that he doesn't have a contract that extends beyond this year. We know the frustrations that he has talked about with the team not giving him the contract that he wants. So I think with him potentially being an unrestricted free agent, there's really no reason for him to push himself back onto the field. So we might see an extended missed time from T. Higgins. And if so, I think that Mike Gesicki is, what we've seen over the last 2 weeks, the direct beneficiary.
Yeah, David, he's one of these guys. Oh, no, really quick, Joey, before you jump in, he's one of these guys that you always like to say is kind of like a double handcuff, where it's not just if something happens to one of the wide receivers, but it might even be like a triple handcuff thing now, because the Bengals do lose Zach Moss for the rest of the season. They do lose Eric All to his knee injury. I know they bring in Khalil Herbert, but there's less weapons on this Bengals offense right now, where Mike Gesicki is just going to continue to be involved. And we've seen that there's a comfortability between he and Joe Burrow. Sorry, Joey, go for it.
No, I was going to say, I was re-looking through the rankings here, and the one that I'm just ready to give up on is Dalton Schultz. I feel like what we saw to him the last few years has been really fantastic, but I think if I have Dalton Schultz, I'm ready to drop him at this point.
Yeah, and that's interesting because like we thought this would be sort of the coming out party for him with Nico Collins off the board and with Stephon Diggs out of the picture, even just for a short period of time here. But I think it's less about the target share and the availability of the players and more so about CJ Stroud and the Texans offense. It just has not looked good this year. And I don't know that it's necessarily even a Dalton Schultz thing. I think it's just a Texans thing. But once Nico Collins
The
is back,
offensive line.
yeah, yeah, it's not quite the same as it was last year, and this happens too. It's kind of hard to say it, but it does happen. Even with some of the best rookie quarterbacks, teams have a whole year of film to know their tendencies, know how they work, understand the offense a little bit better. It becomes slightly more challenging for them, but I do think we will see a nice bump in this offense overall once Nico Collins comes back. All right, guys, let's jump into the next tier where this is going to be a lot of the guys that people actually have rostered. So I think we can be a little bit more open with these players. Let's start at tight end number 15, where we've got Dalton Kincaid. At 14, it's Taysom Hill. 13, Jake Ferguson. 12, Sam Laporta. 11, Kate Otten. And 10, TJ Hawkinson. So I kind of want to do a thing here where we can make the case a little bit, so to speak, because we each have a different tight end that really stands out above the rest. And right now, Joey, you are a lot higher on Sam Laporta than we are. You have Sam Laporta at tight end 10. Was that different before? Did you change that recently? That
No,
ranking? No? Okay. I felt like that was a little bit different, but you do have Sam Laporta the highest out of everyone here at 10. And then Dave, you have Taysom Hill the highest out of everyone here at tight end 9. And I've got TJ Hawkinson up as tight end 7. So I kind of wanted to give us each a chance here just to talk a little bit about these players. So Joey, why don't you kick us off with Sam Laporta?
yeah, I mean, for me, it's more of why I don't like the other two. But with Sam Laporta, he's just simply used more than these other guys on a regular basis. 3 times more receiving yards than Taysom Hill. And I know Taysom Hill's receiving yards is not what you're looking for out of him. But, it's not, no doubt, Laporta
Dirty
has
work.
struggled this season.
That's nasty, nasty work, Joey.
What?
Comparing receiving yards when talking about
No,
Taysom Hill.
I
It's
said,
nasty
that's
work.
why I said, and I know
Like
that's
rookie
not
year
why we're
Lamar
taking,
Jackson. Like, well, look, he's not even passing for that much.
which is why I said, which is not what you're looking for to Taysom Hill.
Per
There's
his
no
last
doubt.
email.
There's no doubt Laporta, he struggled this year. I just can't discount what I saw last year out of that rookie breakout season out of Sam Laporta. I still think he's a huge part of this Lions offense. Now, Dave, if you would like to talk about why you love Taysom Hill, I'm happy to listen. I just have some concerns for him because just the gadgety nature and not being able to depend on the actual work he's going to get. His touches and his receptions, they're very valuable because they seem to come in the red zone when they're most valuable. But for me, it's really hard to roll him out there when he's getting maybe a little north of 4 carries and 2 targets per game. But go ahead and tell me why I'm wrong, because that's why I'm here.
I mean, Taysom Hill's got 9 targets over the last 2 weeks, which is just as many targets as Sam Laporta has. And Taysom Hill also gets the goal line work, and he gets the gadgety quarterback passes every now and then. And this is, Sam Laporta, I wasn't ready to write him off for dead based on what we saw earlier in the season. But then we had the 2-game Jameson Williams suspension. And I said, this is it for Sam Laporta. He's got to put up or shut up over these next 2 weeks. And he didn't really do too much, and that's concerning for me. I thought that the lack of usage that we saw earlier in the season was due to the emergence of Jameson Williams, but with him out of the picture, Sam Laporta didn't really go back to the role we saw last year. This is just a much different Lions team. We look at what they're doing this year. They aren't relying on the pass that they were the way that they were last year. I mean, they are content just running the ball with David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs, and we're seeing Jared Goff with single-digit pass attempts in some of these games. So, we're worried about Amon-Ra St. Brown and what he's going to be able to do in this offense with their change in pass rate. I don't know how Sam Laporta, the third option, is a guy that we can rely on. I'm probably a little bit lower on him than I should be. You do make a good point. What we saw last year as a rookie is tough to ignore, but this year has just been such a disappointment that I'm willing to just shove him way down in the rankings. Taysom Hill, he's only played 5 full games this year, but he's been a top 5 tight end in 2 of those 5 games. He's converted every single touch he's had inside the 9-yard line into a touchdown. I wrote about Taysom Hill in my 3 up, 3 down article yesterday, and I said the worst thing about rostering Taysom Hill is that your league mates are going to make fun of you for it. And that's really it. I mean, you're getting tight end 1 production from this guy. You just have to have thick enough skin to withstand the heat you'll get from your league mates.
Do you have any, I hate to use this phrase, but just like PTSD from using Taysom Hill over the years, where you just gotten burned so bad with him? Okay, he's just not going to be involved this week. Because it does seem
Can I
like
answer for
sometimes.
Dave?
What'd you say?
Can I answer for Dave?
Yes,
He does not have any PTSD about Taysom Hill whatsoever. Not
that's
even the
good.
slightest.
No, I'm like the Taysom Hill guy, and
Yes.
especially right now when you look at it, man, like Chris Olave, they're saying he might be out for the entire year. Like they're saying
Yeah.
Chris Olave might not come back. I mean, at best, he's probably going on IR and missing 4 weeks. At worst, he misses more time than that. Kendre Miller's on IR right now. Jamal Williams is banged up. I mean, there are so many injuries on this team that Taysom Hill is effectively
Well, it
their
means
wide receiver too and their running back too.
For me, that's the most positive thing about Taysom Hill is that when there's one of these injuries, you can kind of plug him in a lot of different places, and he can produce for your team. I just feel like sometimes we see that not at the beginning of the game, but right after it happens. Chris
Right.
Olave went down. Taysom Hill had one carry before that. Yeah, he went down in the first quarter, so that's a really bad comparison. But it does seem in the history of his playing that he does get a little bit more work once players do get injured in game. Sometimes.
I mean, if that strategy can work for us on backup running backs and handcuffs, why can't it work with Taysom Hill, who's sort of the handcuff to every
Yeah.
single player on his team? Quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight. He is the Saints' offensive handcuff. And I think it's the same reason that Dave is willing to start Taysom Hill at tight end every week. No one else is really all that good. So let's just go for something different and see
Yeah.
how many points we can score with this one guy. I think the Saints are kind of going to do the same thing with an offense that's just been so bad. And new head coach Darren Rizzi taking over. Dave and I talked about this in the Monday show that
The Rizzler.
he's, I don't like it. I don't like it. I don't like it, but I'll allow it. He's one of those like tough, hard nosed, classic, old school football coaches that he's taken over. He's been a special teams coach for years, and this kind of fits his MO.
Yeah, and I
On
think
the-
if Taysom Hill was any other position, I wouldn't think twice about him. Like if he was a running back, a wide receiver,
right.
a quarterback, we're never even discussing Taysom Hill. But the fact that he has a tight end designation on some platforms just makes him so alluring.
Do you think that ever changes? Do you think that fantasy platforms ever just say, you know what, this isn't right. Let's fix this or let's change this?
I mean, if they do it,
Baseball
they've got
does
to
it.
do it in the offseason. You can't make a positional change mid-season like this. So, talking dynasty, like, well, he's 33 years old, and we don't know how much longer he's going to be in the league, so I'm not too concerned about it. But for this year, if he's got tight end designation, he's going to have
Oh,
it through
yeah.
the remainder of the season.
Yeah, I think it was more so about like, could they ever do it in the future where they make him only flex eligible, where you can't put him into a positional spot?
It's just
I
like
think that becomes
UTI, he's just a utility
okay.
player, like in baseball.
Okay.
Oh, that's
Thank you for clarifying.
what
Taysom Hill and cranberry juice on a Wednesday. All right. The guy that I put a little bit higher here is TJ Hawkinson. And for me, it's kind of a lot of the same reasons, Dave, that you like Taysom Hill. It's just that there's not much else the tight end position. And I'll take the guy who, up until he got hurt last year, was the tight end 1 overall, tight end 2 in points per game. And in this first game back for TJ Hawkinson, not that he had a monstrous role or anything like that. And there is a little bit of the game script issue there, but the Vikings had one of their best passing, or excuse me, the most pass attempts they've had in a while with this offense. And I think a lot of it has to do with just we've got our targets back. We've got our targets back and healthy. Let's let TJ Hawkinson go out there and kind of keep stirring the offense a bit, because we did start to see Sam Darnold be a little bit more of a pumpkin this past week. And I think that they might end up having to rely on these star players, Justin Jefferson, TJ Hawkinson, the way they have. And quite frankly, I think if you drafted TJ Hawkinson, you've had him on IR this whole time, you're going to ride that. You're going to try to ride that to the championship as best as you can. Joey, you're sort of the tight end whisperer over in rankings in terms of what. Oh, come on. You've had some really good tight end rankings throughout the years. Where are you at with TJ Hawkinson? I know you're not nearly as high on him as Dave or myself.
And it's a complete injury thing. It has nothing else to do with anything. So I was looking at a study in the Journal of Orthopedic Sports Medicine from 2022. Like I opened up the medical journals today for the show. And players that return from an ACL, MCL tear average 5 fewer games per season over the next 3 seasons. That's if they return for a full season. Because only 28% of those players were able to remain in the league for 3 years. So I am just worried of his durability, that he might get re-injured. And I know we shouldn't really factor into that too much. I can't deny what you said, Alfredo. Like the workload is there for him. Jordan Addison, I think we were starting to write him off a little bit. He did have a decent game, but I think TJ Hawkinson probably is the second option on that team. I'm just worried about the durability if he can stay on the field because of the injury.
What were those numbers again? It sounded almost like astronomical of how many players end up having ACLs and then don't really play much in the rest of their career. Did I misread that when
So
you
it's
said it?
the ACL MCL tear. It was a
Okay.
2022 study in the Journal of Orthopedic Sports Medicine found players played 5 fewer games per season over the next 3 seasons if they were able to return to the field. And only 28% of the players were able to remain in the league for 3 seasons following the injury. So from a dynasty
Interesting.
perspective, I'm probably selling TJ Hawkinson.
Now, what is that positions or just all players in general?
That is all players. And it did say that the positions most affected by this were linebackers and wide receivers.
Hmm.
So
Interesting.
to give
It
full
is. It is
context there.
interesting. It is interesting. I'll do the Dave thing here too, where just modern medicine has already changed from 2022 to
Mhm.
now. And if it was talking about the 2020, yeah, 2022, and if it's talking about the 3 seasons prior to that, we're going back even further. So, um, I guess I'll do the Dave here. I'm just willing to bet on modern medicine. I'm
Okay.
willing to bet on this guy staying healthy here. But I totally
Speaking of
understand
which,
your
Jonathan
concern.
Brooks making his debut this week.
Is he?
God, I hope so. God, I hope so.
I mean, if he doesn't, he's shut down for the year. So let's hope he does. It sounds like it.
Yeah.
He's going to
Wouldn't
be
be a
doing
tight end deal
overseas
if we weren't
too.
talking about Jonathan Brooks.
Is there any hope for fantasy value from the Carolina Panthers at this point?
I don't think so.
Might as well
No.
kick the tires, right? On everything you
I
got.
mean, maybe if they go back to Dalton, maybe. I don't know. I mean, Bryce Young looked okay last week, but no, it's sad.
It's
They
bleak.
beat Taysom
It's
Hill
bleak.
and the Saints, didn't they?
All right, let's go to the next tier here, starting at tight end 9, where we got Tucker Kraft at 8, Mark Andrews at 7, Kyle Pitts 6, David Njoku, and at 5, Evan Ingram. So, Dave, I'll start with you on this one. Were we a little too early in our convictions about Tucker Kraft being potentially a top 3 or 4 tight end, and about Mark Andrews basically being cooked? Because now at this point, Dave, you've got Andrews higher than Kraft, and we have them both here in our tier number 3 for tight ends.
Yeah, Mark Andrews has looked a little bit better over the last few weeks. We talked a lot about the lingering effects from the car accident that went really underreported during like a very busy time of the season. Mark Andrews got in this car accident that caused him to miss almost 3 full weeks of practice leading up to the season's kickoff. And I think it's understandable that he was struggling to get up to speed early in the year, but he has been a more active part of the passing attack since then. As for Tucker Kraft, I've still got him inside my top 12, I believe. Yeah, I've got him as my tight end 10 overall. Um, he's still involved, and I think the tough thing with this Packers offense is just that there are so many mouths to feed, and Jordan Love has been the one kind of steady guy in this offense, and we never know if the touches are going to Romeo Dobbs or Dontavian Wicks or Christian Watson or Tucker Kraft, but I think just the fact that Tucker Kraft is a consistent part of that conversation, his weekly usage can be number one on the team on any given week. He's going to have a little shakier floor than a lot of the other top 10 tight ends, but his ceiling every single week is astronomical. We saw him get a fun little 4th-and-1 carry last week as well. So they clearly trust him and his athletic ability. I definitely at this point, now that we've seen Andrews get a little bit healthier and start being a little bit more involved, I prefer him ahead of Tucker Kraft. But I still think that Tucker Kraft is one of the few plug and play tight ends that you can rely on every week.
Joey, you also have Mark Andrews up as your tight end 6. I'm the one that's kind of not out, but just lower. I've got him at tight end 12. I'm not ready to believe just yet. I think what we keep seeing with these tight ends like Kraft and Andrews is we see these touchdown spikes where they'll have almost identical to what they're doing. It's like 3 weeks where they're scoring 3 or 4 touchdowns, and we're like, oh, they're back, and then like they're gone the very next week. And that's still what worries me a little bit about Andrews. The target volume is not quite what we used to see from him. Now they add in Deontay Johnson. And so, Joey, my question to you is that it seems like having him at tight end 6, you're not really too worried about Deontay Johnson. Does he play a factor for you going forward with Mark Andrews?
He does for me in a positive way. I think having
Okay.
another target on the field for the Ravens will actually open things up a little bit more for Mark Andrews. Since week 6, he has been the tight end 5, 12 fantasy points per game in 3 of his last 4. Like, I'm not saying Mark Andrews is back, but he's back on my roster. He's back where I'm comfortable putting him in and not being like, oh God, please show up Mark Andrews. Like, I have my Mark Andrews candles lit. No, not anymore. Candles are out. I'm just ready to roll them out. I think this question is more of what did we not see in Tucker Kraft this offseason? Because kind of everybody was out on him. His ADP was around
Well,
tight end
because he
38.
was
Luke
He was
Musgrave
recovering
was
from
supposed
a
to
He's
be
behind
torn.
Luke Musgrave. Yeah.
He was recovering from a torn pec, and it's just he kept being ahead of schedule for practice, ahead of schedule for games, and then all of a sudden, Luke Musgrave just wasn't even playing at all. Then he gets hurt, and then Tucker Kraft, it's your time to
Boom.
shine, baby.
If you look,
He's
you got to remember
leading.
they drafted both.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was okay. He's leading the team, and my favorite stat for a tight end. That's red zone targets. Like if you're leading your team in red zone targets as a tight end, yay, get on my team.
I thought you were going to say goal line carries. That's what Dave talked about a couple days ago.
I don't think Tucker Kraft's got a goal line carry yet this year, but this is last year we saw in the draft. Green Bay went out and double tapped tight ends. They took Luke Musgrave and Tucker Kraft, and Luke Musgrave was supposed to be the pass catching guy, the guy who had a prolific college career, the guy who had the measurables, the athletics, and he was drafted ahead of Tucker Kraft. So I think Tucker Kraft being the second tight end drafted by the same team who didn't have the same athletic profile and didn't have the same college production, I think people just assume that, well, obviously Tucker Kraft is going to be the blocking guy and Luke Musgrave is going to be the receiving option, and then somehow just flip-flop this year. And I don't think anybody really saw that coming. I mean, I do a ton of best ball drafts, and I was drafting a lot of Luke Musgrave. Tucker Kraft wasn't even on my radar. I just assumed that he would be the second tight end on this team.
We should have seen this coming though. Like just I believe I've said before, narrative analysis. And with this last thing being Kraft and the Cheeseheads being there in Green Bay, we should have seen it coming. Like it should have. Yeah.
I mean, for some more non-cheese related analysis, we were kind of saying throughout the offseason that whoever ends up being the top target for the Packers is going to be extremely valuable. And there was some worry that it wouldn't end up being Jaden Reed. And because of his draft costs, we weren't really drafting a whole lot of him. There still really isn't I'd say an outright top target for this team. That ball still really gets spread around a ton. And Dave, was it not Tucker Kraft that got that? I'm still going back to this. I'm sorry. It's not related to the podcast at all, but was it not Tucker Kraft that got that quarterback sneak for the Packers where they made that shift? Just wasn't at the goal line.
Yep. I shared that on Twitter on Monday. It was beautiful where they ran him in motion and then he went under center, took the ball, picked up 3 yards when he only needed 1. But you talk about how there isn't a clear-cut wide receiver 1. This is crazy. Jaden Reed has 47 targets. Romeo Doubs has 45 targets. Dontavian Wicks has 43 targets. Tucker Kraft has 39 targets. So there are 4 guys that are within 8 targets of each other for the team lead. I mean, the ball is just getting distributed around here so much that, like I said, it makes it really tough to rely on any of these pass catchers in Green Bay as weekly options. But the fact that Tucker Kraft is in the same conversation as the top 3 wide receivers makes him arguably the most valuable of the bunch.
It's kind of like what you said about Taysom Hill. The designation of tight end makes him valuable.
Yeah, like if Tucker Kraft was a wide receiver, he'd be a wide receiver 5. But because he's a tight end, he's a tight end 1.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think we're running into that with a lot of these guys too. It's Mark Andrews, Kyle Pitts. Like they all kind of feel like they are in that same area, and they're all in tier number 3 for us here. Let's go to tier number 2, where there's just it's a very small. There's only 2 tight ends here. At number 4, we've got Trey McBride, and at number 3, Travis Kelce. Now, I asked this, it's a very open-ended question, and I want to see what direction you guys go on this. Joey, between these 2 players, could either one of them actually make a run at the tight end 1 overall, or does that squarely sit with the guys that are in the next tier?
No, I think absolutely these 2 guys could hop over the other ones. With Trey McBride, I think the whole for me, like the boogeyman to Marvin Harrison Jr. taking all his targets away is gone. Like I think we've seen it now that, okay, Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to get targeted, but it's not taking everything away from Trey McBride. He's got the most yardage out of tight ends the last 4 weeks. And with Travis Kelce, I mean, he's had 28 total targets in the last 2 games. It's an easy yes if either of these could become the tight end 1. If I were to, bet on it, no, I'm not going to say that. I think that the other 2 guys we're going to talk about have a better chance, but absolutely they could.
I think the new boogeyman for Trey McBride is that he can't score a touchdown right now, and it's not his fault.
No,
but it's that one play with Kyler Murray missing him wide open, absolutely nuts. Dave,
he had another play earlier in the season where he had a foot that was like just out of bounds, and it's crazy. He's the tight end 3 in per game scoring, and he's done that with 0 touchdowns on the year. So I mean, this feels like Kyle Pitts' rookie season where he went for over 1,000 yards, but because he didn't score a touchdown, he was like a back-end tight end 1. The difference is we're still seeing top 3 production from Trey McBride without the touchdown. So if he can just start, checking some boxes in that column right there, I think he could easily jump ahead and be the overall tight end 1 this year. He just needs to score touchdowns. And Arizona doesn't look like a team that has been able to score a lot of touchdowns. So that's the worry, is we need to see a pretty big change in that offense.
I know they haven't had the toughest schedule this year, but Arizona, they've won 4 out of their last 5, including winning 3 straight. Is it just me, or do the vibes just feel terrible for a team that's won so many games recently? It just does not feel like they are competing.
I think I don't know if it's a negative point differential, but if it's not, it's like very near even. Um, yeah, they feel a little bit fraudulent. They've had some nice matchups and some close wins, but yeah, I don't think that they're a great team.
No, I mean they get the
Yeah,
1
negative
win.
7 point differential
Okay.
on the year.
Really?
Okay.
Wow. And they beat San
Yeah.
Francisco on the road too.
Well, it's because they got a 1-point win over San Francisco, but they got absolutely decimated by Washington. And yeah, and then Green Bay a couple weeks later. So they're good. They're good, but not good enough. And I think that might end up being the boogeyman that's like a hindrance for Trey McBride here, is that the scoring opportunities may be few and far between. It'll take, I think, a lot for that to happen.
And
We
Travis
like him
Kelsey, let's
boogeyman,
just
don't we?
talk about it real quickly. He's obviously the guy who's been the tight end one for years. We're seeing the usage over the last couple of weeks, but are you guys concerned about DeAndre Hopkins? I mean, the usage that I saw from DeAndre Hopkins on Monday night was everything I had dreamt and then some. I mean, like, he is not playing the Rashi Rice Juju role like Andy Reid alluded to. He's running deep posts, he's running go routes, they're getting him screens and slants. I mean, we haven't seen a receiver like this in Kansas City since Tyreek Hill was there, a guy who could run every single route, a guy who could make contested catches, a guy who could catch the ball through traffic, a guy who can make plays after the catch, a guy who's a red zone threat, all of these sorts of things. I can't help but think that as DeAndre Hopkins gets more comfortable in this offense, he is a younger and more dynamic player than Travis Kelsey. And I think Kelsey will inevitably end up being the number 2 option here.
It doesn't worry me too much, because looking at the last couple games with Hopkins, we're seeing the best target performance for Travis Kelsey of the season. Now, I get what you're saying.
The
There
first game
may
with Hopkins, though, he was extremely limited. I'm looking just more at the Monday game.
Sure, Travis Kelsey 14 receptions on 16 targets is absolutely nuts, and having his best performance of the season, 100 yards. It's hard to look at that and say I'm worried that DeAndre Hopkins is going to make Travis Kelsey worse at this point. If anything, it's kind of like the same thing that Joey said with Deontay Johnson and Mark Andrews. I'm getting more excited because this offense is now better. Not that Patrick Mahomes struggles to move the ball downfield, but there are now good targets that are making the defense have to choose between who they're really going to focus on. Travis Kelsey just getting that many targets in that game versus Tampa is kind of exciting. All right, let's move on to tier number 1, where we are looking at tight end 2, Brock Bowers, and tight end 1, George Kittle. So, guys, we all have excuse me, not all of us, but Dave, you have George Kittle as tight end 2. Joey and I have George Kittle as tight end 1, but right now he is our tight end 1. How realistic is it for us to see Brock Bowers finish as the tight end 1 overall as a rookie on one of the worst offenses in the league? He's out here catching touchdowns from Desmond Ridder. Joey, I'll give you a chance to cough that one out. Dave, you already have Brock Bowers as your tight end 1. It seems pretty realistic for you that he can finish there.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, this is crazy. He's number 2 in the league in receptions behind only Garrett Wilson. I mean, his usage has been unbelievable. And now with Devontae Adams out of the picture, we're going to see even more. George Kittle obviously benefits from being in a better offense. He's got 6 touchdowns to Brock Bowers 2, and it wouldn't surprise me if that just continues throughout the season and they end with a respective 12 and 4 touchdowns. But the usage for Brock Bowers right now is just unbelievable. He's getting carries, he's getting jet sweeps, he's getting screens, he's getting red zone touches, he's getting everything. And for me, we kind of joked around that, like, yeah, these guys that we're talking about as tight end 1s would be like wide receiver 5s. Brock Bowers would be a wide receiver 2 if he had a wide receiver designation. Like, he is the focal point of this offense. I think the arrow only points up from here on a talented rookie. So, I mean, it's super close for me. I'm not sitting here trying to make like a strong argument saying Brock Bowers over George Kittle. I mean, these guys are so tight. We know Kittle's the veteran on a better offense. Bowers is the younger guy with more athleticism on a bad offense. I feel like the pros and cons kind of balance each other out. If you've got one of these 2 tight ends, you're feeling pretty darn good for the rest of the season.
Joey, how about you? You have George Kittle as your tight end one here. Is it kind of safe to say that he's going to stay there, or does Brock Bowers have a legit shot at doing this?
If Kittle can stay on the field, I don't see how Bowers. I mean, I guess I can see how Bowers can pass him. I mean, the volume there for Bowers in Las Vegas is insane. But Kittle, I mean, he's number one for a reason. Over 12 PPR fantasy points in 6 straight games. And the offense is now missing key weapons, it seems, by the week. You know, Brandon Ayuk, he's most likely out for the season. Christian McCaffrey is supposed to be coming back this week. Please come back. We need you. But Jordan Mason's out. I think George Kittle is just kind of the reliable one on the field. And for Brock Purdy, who's been like Mr. Accurate, I love having George Kittle out there.
Are we worried at all about Christian McCaffrey coming back? Does that change things for you with George Kittle, or are you kind of operating under the assumption that we may not get Christian McCaffrey back, or at least not back at full strength?
Oh,
Joey, sorry,
I
see you
assume.
one.
Yeah, McCaffrey, I believe he's going to be back on the field. I think San Francisco needs to basically save their season if they're going to have it. Now, if they don't, if San Francisco keeps going down the road they are, do they shut down CMC for the season? Now that could worry me about Kittle a little bit because what's the motivation at this point?
All right, boys, we have any closing statements here we want to make about the tight end position overall? Anything that you think might be pertinent to a fantasy manager as we get towards this? I mean, this run to the fantasy playoffs.
I just want to apologize to any listeners that are catching the snowblower outside my house right now. My neighbor is
Cannot hear
very,
it.
very kind, and he's snowblowing our sidewalk, but it sounds like a spaceship is landing in my front yard, and I'm sorry if anybody hears that.
Gotta say, cannot hear it at
Good.
all, one bit.
Right. Well, in that
But you
case,
know what?
go
That was-
tight ends.
Yeah, I was gonna say that is very indicative to the best advice that we can give about tight ends. Sorry, there's a snowblower out front.
Yeah, I mean, my advice is like if you don't have one of these top guys, pick up Taysom Hill. Just do it. Like with the way the Saints are looking right now, with all the injuries that are piling up, the uncertainty about who's going to play for the rest of the year or not. Taysom Hill, I've got him as my tight end 9 for the season. It wouldn't surprise me if he ends up, outpacing that for the rest of the year. So if you're sitting with one of these guys, kind of the back end tight end ones, the Cade Ottens, Sam Laportas, Jake Ferguson, Dalton Kincaid, pick up Taysom Hill and just see what happens. That's my advice. The same advice I've been giving since August.
Really upsets me that I dropped Taysom Hill before last week, but
Mm.
it's because I have David Njoku and TJ Hawkinson, and I just don't know when I'm going to use Taysom Hill there.
I'm this close to swapping this Lamar jersey out for a Taysom Hill one. It's almost time.
Okay,
You could probably
all
get
right.
it for a lot less money, so you should.
Yeah. No, that's a good indicator that it's time to wrap up the show. As always, want to make a big thank you to our special guest here, Joey Wright, for joining us today. And I always want to remind you guys that you can catch Joey, Jagger, Jeff, and a whole bunch of our Football Guys staff on the Sunday morning live start sit show. So be sure to subscribe to the channel here and submit your questions early. That way these guys can get to them every single Sunday morning. And as always, for myself, Dave, Joey, everyone here at Football Guys, we want to thank you guys for watching and listening all the way through. We'll see you next time. Adios.